the slightly getting started, but we are still waiting for one of our joint presenters to join us, but I'm sure he'll be with us very soon. Today's webinar is brought to us by one of the Open Group members, Corso Limited. Before I hand over to our speaker, Jamie Knowles, start the presentation, I'd just like to go over a few housekeeping issues just to ensure that the event moves forward smoothly. I would encourage everyone to ask questions during the event. Is one of the major objectives of the Open Group bringing these events to you. The best way to submit a question is to actually write your question in the text QA facility. If you write your question in that QA facility, can I ask you to address it to all? That way everyone gets to see all the questions that have been submitted. And we like to ask all the questions at the end of the event. You may also be interested to know this event is going to be recorded. So if for any reason you have to leave the event early or experience any local technical difficulties, then the event will be recorded for you to watch at a later date, and you'll get an email with the necessary URL where you can access that recording tomorrow. So Jamie, if you're ready and you'd like to, I see that Andrew's with us now, but Jamie, do you want to start? Or?
Fantastic, that's great. Thanks, Simon.
Jamie, thanks a lot.
Welcome to the webinar. Okay, first thing then is we'll introduce the presenters. So myself, my name is Jamie Knowles. I'm the Research and Development Director for Corso Limited. And later on you're going to be hearing from Andy Tucker, who's the Head of Strategy and Architecture at the UK Department of Work and Pensions. Okay, so I'm going to put to you a number of things. We'll start with a few introductions as to who Corso is. We're then going to head over to Andy, who's going to talk about his experiences at the Department of Work and Pensions around ArchiMate and enterprise architecture, some of the challenges that he faces, and some ideas of how he's going to solve them. I'm going to tell you a little bit about ArchiMate itself, the language, the benefits of the language, and then we're going to do a little demonstration of the ArchiMate within IBM Rational System Architect, the modeling tool. A little bit about the roadmap of where we're going with our products, and then we'll start off with some questions and answers. Okay, just to introduce Corso, we're a pretty small new company. We were started last year, the start of 2011. We were a breakaway group from IBM Rational, so we were originally part of the product team for Rational System Architects, and we broke away to really develop enterprise architecture further and use some of the knowledge that we'd acquired over the years to build some fairly exciting tools around the area of strategic planning, which we'll talk about in a minute. So some of our founder members, we've been involved in enterprise architecture and different methodologies associated with enterprise architecture for many, many years. The individuals within Corso, we were the authors of the business process modeling notation, or one of the group of authors, and we were the first to get enterprise architecture into a tool so that it could be actually usable. We're based in the United Kingdom, in Leamington Spa. We've recently opened up offices in the USA, so offices in New York now. Okay. So what do we do? We specialize in strategic planning for IT, so we're really sort of expanding from enterprise architecture. So EA is a great way of understanding, capturing information about the organisation in a structured way, and then being able to use that information to solve problems around the organisation. So expanding on that. So strategic planning is all about being able to take in ideas from around the organisation and information that could potentially change it, and then use that information, analyse that information to help us make decisions on change projects in the organisation. We're focusing primarily around strategic planning for IT, so rather than sort of the big picture business planning, we're focusing primarily on IT. So as a company, we're a business partner of IBM. We're a member of the Open Group, and we hold a commercial license for ArchiMate, so we can develop products around ArchiMate, and we get involved in developing the ArchiMate specification itself. And we provide a range of things. We're developing some of our own products. So the strategic planning platform that we're building is going to incorporate a number of products from a number of different vendors working together, integrated with some of our own products to deliver a unified platform to support strategic planning. Okay, so amongst those products, we also deliver some services. We deliver a lot of our products through our cloud platform, and we can offer software as a service offerings as well. So if you want to run tools in the cloud, you don't have to set them up and manage them yourselves. We'll take care of that for you. Okay. So I'm just check to see whether my colleague Andy is with us. I know he was running late. Andy, are you settled and comfortable?
Hi, Jamie. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hey, Jamie. So, again, Jamie's done his introduction. I'll just do a bit of introduction about the world that I currently am in, who we are, and why I'm particularly keen on the use of ArchiMate, and particularly in the context of using the Rational System Architect tool. Do you want to move slides on? Basically, we are the largest central government UK department. DWP stands for the Department for Work and Pensions. We have approximately 100,000 employees at the moment. Obviously, in terms of the current climate within UK government at the moment, we're obviously driving down hard on number of employees, etc. Currently have about 1,000 physical locations, all within the UK. And every day at the moment, we're processing approximately 50,000 job claims, with approximately 1 million job searches done on a number of different search engines on different types of devices around our estate. We conduct about 65,000 advisory interviews with people that we're trying to help get back into work. And we process about 2.8 million benefit payments per month, paying out approximately 200 billion UK sterling pounds per year, with an annual IT budget of about £1 billion per annum. Again, driving hard on reducing that number across quite a diverse supplier base. We have currently commercial arrangements, primarily with HP and BT, but have recently recommercialized arrangements across our application portfolio across a number of other suppliers, including IBM and Accenture. And we're currently running what we believe is one of the biggest IT delivery programs on the planet, called Universal Credit, which is in support of some of our new strategic drivers. Jamie, can the next slide, please? Thank you. So two of those principal strategic drivers at the moment is a fundamental change of the current welfare reform system in the UK. And Universal Credit is much delivering the kind of new landscape for that, principally the new IT systems, but also the kind of policy and legislation that's needed to support it. And very much about incentivizing people that may be to work to obviously look for ways of getting back into work, even if that's part-time work, making sure that they're not disadvantaged by taking on part-time work. And also obviously about getting people that are out of work back into work, getting what we describe as Britain working again, and other different programs of work that are around the Universal Credit solution to kind of support that activity. Of course, you know, some of our challenges and drivers, as I've already touched on, is very much the pressure that we have from the UK government treasury to obviously reduce our cost base, and how we drive down and become more efficient in achieving that. But particularly in obviously the context for me around the challenges we have in rationalizing our current IT estate, where we have across our estate today on a disparate set of technologies and a disparate set of suppliers, and trying to look for the kind of rationalization opportunities we have to kind of reduce obviously costs and maintaining and managing that, and obviously reuse opportunities that are out there. Likewise, in terms of also turning the current UK civil service into a more professional organisation, in terms of developing the skills and capability within our people and how we make them through more efficient at what they do, and looking at new kind of approaches to how we do things like IT delivery. So again, Universal Credit is very much predicated by using agile delivery methods, And likewise, recently we've made announcements around outsourcing some of our key functions and continue to review those functions with a view to how we could maybe look to other providers of some of the services we currently offer. Next slide, please.
Okay, thank you.
Very much some kind of like bullet points around the vision. Universal credit is predicated by putting approximately 80% of our current transactional volumes online. Very much about how we kind of like move to more web-enabled channels and obviously look to self-serving applications and solutions. So people, UK citizens, can access our services, not just our DWP type services, but obviously UK government services more simply. And we have a number of major programs running around things like the whole identity assurance space, etc., and how we can actually transact better online. As I already said, we're obviously looking at ways of simplifying and rationalizing our current IT estate, looking at new commercial ways of dealing with our suppliers, from historic kind of monolithic framework type arrangements of the 90s to more smaller types of arrangements with potentially smaller suppliers. Obviously looking to our suppliers to have a better accountability in terms of what they're delivering on our behalf. And as I've already said, looking for outsourcing opportunities where we don't believe we're best at providing some of the current services we have. Next slide, please. Again, coming back to ArchiMate and why we're very keen on it, and the plugin that Corso have been developing on the back of the Rational System Architect product, it's very much about how we actually can use ArchiMate to do four principal things. One is around having a predefined meta model, which clearly shows kind of relationships across the kind of like entities that we're trying to model. Very much aligned with the use of TOGAF, which is our overarching framework. The approach is obviously in both methodology owned by the Open Group. And for me, two other areas. One is obviously about visualization and representation. I'll call it a notational approach, which is very important because of the diversity of the number of different suppliers we have delivering ID systems into our estate, and also the kind of large organization we are, trying to get some kind of proper kind of consistent representations in what we're trying to deliver in terms of the architecture and strategic models that we have. Finally, ArchiMate obviously, and shortly with ArchiMate 2.0 to be launched by the Open Group, is the detailed specification, so we get away from the kind of internal debates about what specific terminology is. ArchiMate very much gives us that, so we're very clear what we mean by something like an application or an application component. Okay, next slide, please. A very simplistic representation of the types of things that we can represent in our world in ArchiMate. Clearly, we have a number of different viewpoints through a business or business reference model that we have, through an application reference model, and through a technology reference model, and how ArchiMate can allow us to kind of visualize that and show some simple representations of the relationships that we have with clear kind of annotation about what these objects actually represent. Next slide, please. And again, another simple representation of a kind of go across in a business application and technology context about that we've been to modeling in our world using the ArchiMate to kind of like represent some simple systems and representations that we need. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, so a little bit more about ArchiMate. What is it and the benefits of it? So Andy's been talking a lot about sort of notation meta model. So what ArchiMate really offers to us is a language in which we can all describe and talk about the enterprise. So 16 years ago, when we first started talking about enterprise architecture, we didn't really have many standards in this area. And we spent a lot of time sort of at the start of every enterprise architecture engagement trying to decide what are the concepts that we want to use, what information do we need to be able to solve the problem, and to build a language that we can work within. So enterprise architecture with a structured modeling language gives us a whole heap of benefit. So generally, when we're trying to make any decisions to change our organisation, and we gather information, and without this type of approach, then the information that we gather is unstructured, and to be able to ask questions of unstructured information is difficult. So to be able to identify, do we have any gaps in our knowledge? How do concepts within this information relate to one another? What's the impact of changing or dissing these concepts? It's difficult to do that. So ArchiMate gives us a structured language of concepts, so a list of entities, of things that we want to understand, the relationships and dependencies between them, and then a framework in which we can place attributes. So what information do we need about things? And it covers all architectural domains, so it's not just an IT-centric thing. We need to be able to make any change to our business. We need to understand the big picture. We need to understand the business, the dependent IT, so the business software, the underpinning technology, and information that is used throughout that lot. So we need to understand how it all connects together. And ArchiMate does that. So it's the first standard commercial modelling language. So in the military and defence spaces, we have DODAF and MODAF, which are great. But in the commercial space, there's been very little out there. So ArchiMate really is plugging a big gap. Okay, and ArchiMate is not to solve all our problems for us. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but we can combine ArchiMate with some methods like TOGAF to be able to help us solve problems. So in order to make decisions, we need a whole bunch of things. So again, just to look at that language, so we've got the meta model. So top left-hand corner, we've got all the different concepts. Okay, so things like business, function, role, application component, great. With symbology for it, top right-hand corner. So when I draw a picture of our eyes, then again, that picture will stand what it means. So there have been some other notations out there, some other languages. So TAF, for instance, a meta model, it has the top left-hand corner, but it's never a notation. DODAF and MODAF don't have a notation. So if we want to draw pictures of them, we have to kind of invent that language every time we start a process, and all the people, the consumers of this information, need to understand that language. So having both the terms and the notation is very, very important. That allows us to draw little pictures like we have at the bottom, that hopefully when we all speak the ArchiMate language and we're all fluent with it, we can look at that diagram and understand unequivocally exactly what it means. So to deliver value with enterprise architecture, we need a series of things. The first and probably the most important thing is to understand what is the problem that we're to solve. So enterprise architecture is a very broad field of science, and over the years we've certainly seen it fail many times where that initial problem has been unclear. So the first thing to do is work out what it is to solve. Done that, then we can start building an enterprise architecture project, and we need an approach to that project. Okay, so a method that we might want to follow. Once we've got that approach, we then need a language. Okay, so information do we need to solve that problem, and what does that information look like? What's the language in which we're going to describe it? And then the next part is the technique we're going to use to help us solve the problem. And I think this is where sort of we're really lacking over the years. So how do I use that information to generate some real value? Okay. Now, with things, a number of standards appear along this chain. So TOGAF really does satisfy how do we run an enterprise architecture project. It's great. So we've got that. We can now move on. And ArchiMate now plugs the next bit. So again, reasons why EA projects have failed over the years. We've seen projects spending a lot of time sort of the academia of the language, trying to spend a lot of time working out what are the terms that we're going to use. We use the word sort of function or organizational unit or business component. Which ones are good for us? So having a standard language allows us to sort of leap forward and concentrate on the next parts, which are the important parts. So takes to help us solve the problem. So how do I look at summation that I've gathered and described within my ArchiMate language? How do I look at a business architecture and see problem and issues within it? How do I decide whether my business architecture is good? Okay, and there's still really stood out there. There's a lot of proprietary techniques that different companies own. So, for instance, IBM have component business modeling, which is a really good way of looking at a business architecture and asking questions of it and deciding whether it's good or bad. There's sort of little techniques like affinity analysis. How do I group together resources to be able to define a well-structured component in my organization? If I want to reduce my application portfolio, so reduce the number of applications I've got, what techniques are there available to help me decide which applications I can sunset? So I think the combination of TOGAF and ArchiMate have really helped us sort of move away from a lot of these academic discussions to focus on these solid techniques. So we also working with companies like DWP to help sort of define some of those techniques, solidify them, and then put them into tooling so that we can all benefit from them and move forward. So a little summary of benefits of ArchiMate. As I said, it's an open standard, so this makes it very attractive to organizations. So when you're doing your architecture, you're bringing different people into the group to be able to use your enterprise architecture. You don't have to train people up time and time again. The language standards, they should be already familiar with it. Hopefully, ArchiMate and TOGAF will be the lingua franca for enterprise architecture. Okay. Structured language allows us to move away from unstructured information and be able to ask questions of it. So no longer fuzzy pictures. We can see here the gaps in my architecture. And it's simple. So again, seen over the years many different approaches to enterprise architecture, many different languages. Many of them have been very bloated, very cumbersome. It takes a lot of time to learn it, and being on what information do I need to solve the problem. So ArchiMate is lean and simple with just enough information to solve the problem, but at the same time extensible, so it is perfectly acceptable to extend it with additional concepts, to be able to add attributes for particular purposes, to be able to connect to other languages such as UML and BPMN. ArchiMate's got some good stories around this. Okay. And it works with tested methodologies like TOGAF. Okay. Proven. There are many organizations out there using ArchiMate, like the Department of Work and Pensions, and delivering real value with it. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about tooling. I won't spend a massive amount of time sort of giving you a sales pitch, but we're going to look at Rational System Architect, which is a sort of heavyweight enterprise architecture tool based around a robust repository. It's a multi-user tool, so many people can work together on an architecture. As it's meta-model driven, it can support languages like ArchiMate, and most importantly, once we've built model, we've gathered information together, then we can start asking questions of it, so analysis and reporting, and publishing as well. So we want to be able to take this wonderful information that we've gathered and structure it into nice diagrams, and we want to be able to push it out so people can use it. Okay. And there's some nice features in there like workspaces, so that we can model alternatives and variants and versions of our architecture. We'll give a demonstration of it, but I've put this into the slide deck because I think it's important. But as well as being able to just gather information, there are products out there like Rational Focal Point, which allow us to take information within our enterprise architecture and visualize this and use the technique of prioritization. So we want to be able to involve as many stakeholders in the organization as we can in making decisions. So we want to be able to take information from our enterprise architecture, publish it to an audience, and ask them to prioritize lists of concepts and be able to contribute information, which we can then bring back into the enterprise architecture and help us make decisions. So Focal Point is very good for that. I'm not going to dwell too much on that, but we can talk about that another time. So where does Corso get involved? Earlier, we've produced an add-on product to Rational System Architect to support ArchiMate. So we were asked by IBM to develop a plugin, which was released November last year. We're just about to release support for ArchiMate 2, so we'll be launching that at the San Francisco Open Group event at the end of this month. What this is, support for the ArchiMate meta model. So we've taken all the different concepts within ArchiMate, the relationships, we've implemented that within the system architects and the diagram and notation approach. We've used techniques like representational consistency that we'll talk about in a bit. And we've put some nice gadgetry that helps us really build models. So being able to some concepts, build relationships is all well and good, but the tool should really help us throughout that process and has derived some value from the model. So again, we'll look at that later on. And this product has been reviewed by IBM development teams, and it's now ready rational. So it's got the ready rational badge and is available to purchase from Corso. Okay, so let's have a look at a demonstration. Okay, this is Rational System Architects. We've built a model inside the tool. So we'll start off sort of showing how we can ask questions of that model, and then we'll work backwards and we'll look how we build the model. So this model is all about a fictitious company called ArchiSurance, and guess what? It's an insurance company. So this view here, the product landscape view, is showing the 4 key products that ArchiSurance provides: so home insurance, car insurance, holiday insurance, and travel insurance. Okay. So we built a diagram. Behind this is a model that contains lots of information, lots of different concepts, all related together and related back to these products. So what we're going to do now is start to ask some questions about this architecture and visualize the answers to those questions within this product landscape view. Okay, so System Architect is going to help us. So the first thing we're going to ask it to do is to tell us about these different products. What we want to know about are the different business services that make up these different products. Okay, so within pet insurance, we've got 4 business services here: claim registration service, claim payment service, etc. So we've broken down each of these products into the constituent business services. And System Architects helped us build this visualization. Okay. The thing we want to do is to understand a little bit more about the model. Now, we know underneath this model there are, so behind these business services are raised by processes. Processes have applications assigned to them. So sort of this entire on a page view, I want to ask some questions about our application landscape on the diagram. This tool here called the Heatmap Manager. What we can do is fire off a whole series of reports that'll adorn this diagram with some answers to those questions. So what it's done here is it's coloured in these business services by virtue of the relationships across the meta model to the underlying application. So we can see that this is in red. There are some applications supporting those business services that don't have an adequate disaster recovery plan or any disaster recovery plan at all. Okay, so we might have decided that car insurance products is a very important product to us. Next 12 months, we're going to increase the number of car insurance we want to sell. So hang on, we might have a problem here in that some of our underlying applications don't have a DR plan. Okay, we might want to do something about it. We can do the questions like support status. So are there any applications that are out of support underneath? And here you can see that travel insurance, there's applications that are out of support, but they don't have a DR plan, but they're fully supported. But on the left, these 2 applications, they don't have a good support plan, and they only have partial disaster recovery. So again, it's just telling us sort of useful information, quick sort of dashboard type view of our organisation. Okay, and it's very important to be able to slice and dice this information in different ways. So if we're looking at an organisation like the size of the Department of Work and Pensions, we've got a lot of information there. We need to be able to produce these sort of high-level views, so where we can see sort of hotspots where there might be issues, so that we can then drill down into the model and start to look at some of the detail that might explain why we have red spots on the diagram. So the tool needs to be able to allow us to slice and dice and visualize that information in different ways. So what we do is create another view on our model here. So this is a network-style Explorer diagram. Okay. And we can take one of those particular business services that we're interested in and start to look at some of the relationships with that business service. So let's take the claim registration service and start to explore what it's related to. So it's a tool to show what's related. And immediately we can see, okay, so here's a lot of other business services that it's, or diagrams that it picks. Here's some products, other products that it supports. So this business service is supporting quite a few of our products. It's an important business service. Okay, that's useful. There are some roles that directly use this business service. That's good. Okay. Processes. Okay, there are some key business processes that are supported by some applications. So we can start to see some of those relationships that we were using to generate our heat map. So those applications that were telling us whether we got disaster recovery or support issues. And via this sort of view, I can drill down any of the objects and start to look at some of the other relationships or attributes of those concepts. So we use the ArchiMate structured language to help us answer questions. Okay. So other needs that we have, we might want to see some sort of tabular report, so lists of things in our architecture and their relationships. So we might want to find another little report that says, show me in a tabular fashion how my business services are related to business activities, and then do the underlying applications. So great, I've got the claim registration service that we're looking at, and there's 4 applications that are supporting it through support of business activities. There's the pet registry business service. And again, I can open up these objects and explore some of their attributes. Here's some of those attributes that were driving the heat map. Okay. So of different ways to visualize the information and help us answer questions. So what are we to build this model? So we've implemented the ArchiMate language within System Architect. So we've got all the different views that ArchiMate support, different diagram types, and we've got a whole series of different object types. Okay, all implemented within System Architect. We've created a little framework view so we can group together and find different concepts nicely within this framework view. Okay, so different ways of getting at the information that we want to find. So let's look at some of the models that help answer some of those questions, build some of those initial views. So this is a standard ArchiMate view. This is the products view. Okay, and this is that we have the 5 different products with the organization, and tells us what value the products are really providing to our clients. So simple, insurance products enable our customers to be insured, and behind that round value symbol, we can define exactly what we mean by be insured, what value is associated with that. The view that we have here, again, the ArchiMate product viewpoint, so we can start to see individual products, what sort of contracts and information associated with it. So a car insurance policy has got some very important documents or contracts. We've got a terms and conditions, a policy document, a proposal document, etc. And here are the individual services that make up the car insurance product. Okay, so a very useful view, and we'll produce those for each of the products. We can then drill down into different ArchiMate views. So those business services, we can start to see some of the business practices that realise those services. So the car insurance policy service, there are 4 key business processes that make up or realise that business service. So one question I often hear about is sort of the ArchiMate language versus BPMN. So at a sort of high level like this, we might want to use ArchiMate to represent those business processes, and then we might want to drill down into BPMN to start to look at some of the detailed process flows behind them. Okay, so ArchiMate 2 has some good instructions on how to do that, and we've implemented that within the next release of this product. Okay. This here allows us to see these business processes, and then here are those applications that we're talking about. So these applications are assigned to these different level business processes. Okay. Okay, so the next thing we want to look at. So this year, let's start looking at how we build the models out. So on this diagram, I've got a number of concepts I've already brought on. So over on the side, we've got the insurance seller role. Okay, so we know it's a role because it's got a little sort of cylinder or roll symbol, a little joke. The ArchiMate Foundation put in place. So the insurance seller role, we want to see how that concept relates to the sell insurance policy activity. Okay, and the structured language behind that, we've got the a method that defines what are the different concepts and the relationships between them. So in ArchiMate 1, this is the meta model. So these are all the different concepts and the relationships. So we can see the business role there, and that little line is the assigns relationship. So it can be assigned to a particular business process. So we can state that this role performs the process. So using the right relationship line, I can draw a line between these things and start to build out the model. And an important feature of ArchiMate is that the view, the diagram, and the underlying model are kept in step. So if I just open up the underlying object, we can see the relationship there as to activities. So the model and diagram are kept in step at all times. So I can spread my diagrams across different pages or different diagram views, and move the same two concepts onto different views, and the lines will appear. They're always kept in step. Very, very important. Okay, and just to illustrate how sort of models and views are kept in step and the benefits of that, this is a different view upon the model. I might see a list of all my key activities within the organisation, and I'll see a list of all the different roles, and start to build out my model just by placing X's in the cells of this matrix. So I can just sort of plonk these X's in, and I'm not building out the model. I'm now stating that these roles perform these roles are assigned to these processes in ArchiMate parlance. And if we move down the cell between sell insurance policy and insurance seller and go back to my view and then refer to the diagram, I can see that the line will disappear. So model and view are kept in step. Very important. So we've seen a simple relationship between insurance seller and sell insurance policy. And we look now at perform credit checks. So this relationship is slightly different. We know that the insurance seller doesn't actually carry out this process. It's not directly assigned to that process. And ArchiMate has a very good extra set of relationships which allow us to shortcut the modeling process. If we go and look at the method again of direct relationships, so we can see business role here. The business role is using a business interface, and that business interface is assigned to a business service which is realizing the perform credit check process. So there's a service elsewhere provided by something else, some other organizational unit, so the business actor, that is going to provide that process. And we want to state that this business role, the insurance seller, is using indirectly that business process. So ArchiMate has an extra series of relationships, indirect relationships, and they've stated a series of those little journeys across the meta model that are valid. Okay, so between business role and business process, we see we've got an assigned relationship and an indirect usage. And within the modeling tool, then we've implemented the direct relationships in black, and then the indirect ones in red. The early stages within modeling projects, we can just simply draw a line and say, I know that the insurance seller uses this process perform credit check. So just to show that there it is, actually change the model by drawing that line. But I know really that there are a series of real objects behind that, but at this point in time I don't know what they are. I just want to sort of lay down and sort of do a quick modeling exercise to say that those concepts are related in this way. Okay, so powerful technique allows us to rough cut models. One of the downsides of that is that we've ended up with quite a lot of possible relationships between concepts in the model, and many of the modeling tools have some quite nice tools, like this one that we've got, System Architect. I can draw a sort of mad line between concepts, and it'll tell us what are the possible relationships between these different concepts. So being a business role and an activity, there are direct relationships, so assigned to, and get the tool to populate that relationship for us. And again, just showing up my sleeves, I can open up the objects and see there's a relationship. Okay. And if we use that tool again, it can help us build out those indirect relationships. And we can use the tool to say, just draw a line on, as we did before, to show that indirect relationship. And later on, I might come back and start to populate what are relationships between them, what are the intermediate objects. Or we could get the tool to help us build that out. If I select this indirect relationship, so there it is, uses business interfaces, assigned to business services, realized by activities, great. Okay, and select a couple of options here. And what this is now going to help us do is sort of give it a little journey across the meta model. So the role is using a business interface. That business interface is then assigned to a business service. That business service then is realized by a business activity. So great, that's the relationship that I want to build out, but I really want to now start to work out what are the business services involved in this relationship. What are the business interfaces involved? So if I click on it here, the tool will tell us within the model are all the possible business services that I have available to us. It gives us a little bit more information as well. So it's telling us that the credit checking agency is already realized by Perform Credit Check. This service already provides this activity. Okay, so that's probably the business service that I want to choose within this part of the model. So it's really helping us here. So if I select that, I then want to know, well, which business interface might I want to choose when I'm creating this model? Again, it gives a list of all the different business interfaces in the model, but it's now telling us a little bit more information. It's telling us that the insurance seller already has access to a telephone. Great, that's useful. Okay, and it's telling us that the checking agency provides interfaces via the web and the pool service. So, okay, so how am I going to get my business role to connect to the credit checking agency? Which interface am I going to select? So here I'm going to make a decision that I'm going to, my insurance seller, to use an additional business interface. If I click Finish, then the tool is going to build out the model for me. So this really is an example of how the tooling can help us understand the different concepts within my model and help us design part of the business. Cool. Okay, probably as much as I wanted to say about the tool. Let me go back to the slide deck. Okay. So what I'll talk to you now about is a little bit about the roadmap. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes, then we'll go over to some questions. So a little disclaimer, we reserve the right to change our mind at any point in time. But here's our roadmap. So in November, we released support for ArchiMate 1. And then back in December, we introduced some extra features within that. And then February this year at the ArchiMate 2 Open Group conference in San Francisco. So the Open Group are going to release support for ArchiMate 2, and at the same time we're going to release support within System Architect for ArchiMate version 2. Okay, so ArchiMate 2's got some very exciting things within there. We've extended, or it's been extended to include the motivation domain. So we want to understand the goals that our organization has, so we can link that into the rest of our model. So the motivation domain, and implementation and migration. So what to do to change our organization to be able to achieve those goals. So there's a whole series of extra notation there to define we change our organization. And there's some other little things, as I mentioned earlier, like linkage into BPMN, okay, which people have been asking for. Okay, so Corso, we sort of ecosystem. We have some partner companies like the Armstrong Process Group, some of you might have heard of, that are specialised in sort of consultancy services around the TOGAF method. So they're doing a lot of work around teaching people how to use ArchiMate and TOGAF, and they teach you how to use tools like Rational System Architects and our plugin to be able to achieve value. Okay, so that's much I wanted to say. Hand over some questions and answers, Simon.
Jay, thank you for that. It appears that we've had a bit of a lock-up on your presentation. I'm not sure what slide it is, Jamie, but we had a bit of a freeze on the presentation. But we do have a couple of questions we'd like to address. The first question is Layla and asking, and she says this is a question to Andrew. Is Andrew still on the line? And she's asking. Andrew, she's asking, how do you handle transition architectures as time goes by, part of a transition architecture? And she says, how to handle a number of versions of all building blocks. So I think she's asking here, all architecture is time related. How do you manage that process over time?
It's a very good question, actually. We have a kind of regular cycle of publication of different versions of our architecture, and we have something called a prop catalog, which is what we actually version control. So we've obviously got quite a few thousand different artifacts in the context of our strategic architecture, and this product catalog is what we actually kind of like version control, while a lot of the assets within it have versions. In the context of using the actual tooling, obviously we have to build different representations of architectures as we move forward in time to support our strategic planning. As I said, we're right in the middle of a major IT delivery program, Universal Credit, and that is obviously, as we roll out from 2013 through to 2017 with that major program of work, it's going to be superseding a number of our existing, call them legacy systems, if you will. So also being kind of drawing up some dependency maps, etc., of what that will mean to our architecture, different representations that we've been building within System Architect to show that.
Andrew, thank you for that. We have a question here from Shurab Raj asking, to accommodate ArchiMate, do we need to change the System Architect meta model? James, who would like to answer that?
Absolutely not. So System Architect out of the box comes with support for a whole range of different modelling approaches. So we talked about things like ODAF and MODAF, the support in there for the TOGAF 9 meta model. And as I said, so IBM have commissioned us, Corso, to develop a fully packaged solution. So that's what we're just looking at, which includes the full meta model. So you put this add-on, install it, and then you can start creating encyclopedias with the full ArchiMate meta model. So the moment if you buy it, it'll come with ArchiMate version 1, and then at the end of the month or start of next month, you'll be able to buy it with support for ArchiMate 2. So we've done the work to customize the tool to support the ArchiMate meta model. I think on the previous question about transition planning, ArchiMate 2 has a lot in this area. So the implementation and migration side of things, there's a whole series of new concepts like the concept of a plateau and a gap, so we can model a particular sort of stable state architecture which will help us deliver all the goals that we modeled in the motivational model, and then we start to identify gaps between that plateau, so perhaps to be a plateau and an as-is state, to account what do we need to do, what changes do we need to make to the organisation, and then build out a series of work packages or projects that we need to do to deliver that new stable state, that new plateau. So with this product, we've implemented that meta model, and we were talking about techniques earlier on. We're going to be delivering a whole series of techniques to be able to help us use enterprise architecture to define what is our project portfolio and help us make decisions on which projects we'll be running. So as changes to our organisation come in, we need to look at our existing project portfolio and say, okay, does this change mean that we've got to stop a project or change an existing project, or do we need to start a new project? What does a project look like? How can we group together ideas to build a project? Let's if we need to change it, is there anything existing in the organisation that we can reuse? So all this stuff is going to be covered in ArchiMate 2. Hopefully this is your question. Question, Simon.
Is it just me?
I don't know. Simon with us.
Sorry, I pressed the mute button. Apologies. I just wanted a quick point about ArchiMate 2. ArchiMate 2, the official launch of ArchiMate 2 is the 30th of January. So from that date, you'll be getting a lot more information available around ArchiMate 2. So look out for that on your website and other relevant websites. Before we see the questions come in, Jamie and Andrew, I just wonder if you just give us information of why you selected ArchiMate in the first place.
Say that one, Jamie.
First.
Yeah, something for the group, I suppose. I mean, we're very much wedded as a UK public sector organisation to TOGAF as a high-level framework. But for me, TOGAF really, with the arrival of TOGAF 9, obviously, and the delivery of a content meta model, but by then we'd already had a look at ArchiMate before even the group had adopted it as a much better way of having a much better content meta model in our view in terms of relating the various kind of architectural viewpoints we wanted to represent. So ArchiMate for us gave us that, and I said in my very short presentation, you see the ArchiMate specification along with the notational elements of it. And to be clear, there's certain other notations. So within business process modeling that our organisation is doing, that's very much wedded to a BPM approach. But we've shown by extending the existing ArchiMate model that that's not a problem for us, as Jamie can probably comment. But very much ArchiMate gave us an out-of-the-box meta model with a very clear set of specifications and notation that we could use without getting into too many academic conversations about what the right approaches were.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the key things about it is it's a standard language, so a standard series of concepts and a standard notation, and there's just nothing else out there. So in the free space, there's DODA and MODAF, but in the commercial space, there's nothing available. And as I was saying earlier, we're spending a lot of time sort of trying to develop the language at the start of every EA project. Well, having this available means we can sort of leapfrog ahead and focus on delivering value.
Well, that's great. Well, no more questions seem to be coming at the moment, so I think this is... we've got one more question come in. As I say this is from Wajim Vita. ArchiMate is understandably industry neutral. Are there any specific flavours to it that lend themselves to a specific industry? Andrew, Jamie, any answers to that?
Yeah, language itself is industry neutral. The information that you put in it can be more specific. So we have a standard language reference models. So the whole world of reference models is going to be very exciting. In the past, saw things like NGLAW, it's called frameworks now, so ETOM, TAM and SID for the telecommunications industry. And that was really provided by different vendors using different languages and notations and meta models. So it was quite a challenge if you have adopted TOGAF 9 or ArchiMate or it was in the past to then be able to bring in ETOM. You kind of had to rework the information to get it into our structure. So if we can now have a standard language, then we can have all these industry standard reference models available as ArchiMate models, which is going to be very powerful. So I expect to see a much larger number of industry standard reference models appearing in the future, written in ArchiMate.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jamie. I noticed now we've nearly come up to the top of the hour. That's the hour we have allocated for this event. I'd like to thank you, Jamie, and I'd like to thank you, Andrew, for this very interesting presentation. I'd like to thank everyone for participating. We do have quite a full schedule of webinars coming up over the next couple of months, so please do keep an eye on the Open Group website. Once again, thank you, Jamie, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, everyone, for participating. I think I'll end the presentation here. Thank you.